Hello. What is a word in the world of a toddler? With us today is Bittman. She's a registered speech and language pathologist, and she's going to answer that question and many more. And I think her answers will surprise you. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hi, thank you.
How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
So before we jump into our questions, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, I grew up in Ontario. I've been in BC for 3 years practicing as a speech language pathologist here, and I have the best job in the world.
That's so great. What does a speech and language pathologist do, or what do you do?
Well, speech language pathologists work with people of all ages from birth to death, but what I do, I work primarily with the preschool population to help them with their speech, sound, and language concerns, either how they're using their words, gestures, sentences, or how they're understanding. Maybe with some children who are having some fluency difficulties, so stuttering or voice disorders, quite a bit,
Yeah.
broad range.
We'll talk about stuttering later on, because there is one thing that I just do want families to know,
sure.
and that is that practically every child in the world stutters at some point, and that's perfectly normal. If we just don't pay attention, it goes away.
Exactly.
Is that
Yes.
right? Maybe
Yes.
say a couple of words about that now.
Okay. Well, as children are developing their language and as they're going through these periods of language burst, it can be normal to hear them use normal non-fluencies. I just used one then as I was choosing my words. And as long as they are not too frequent, around 5%, although the numbers vary depending on the research, it's nothing to be concerned about. It's almost like, you know, when you watch Netflix and there are hundreds of choices and you have no idea what to choose, and so you might start and stop something until you find something that's just right. It's just like that for children. As they have so many more options, as they're expanding their language so much, they might experience the same thing where they start and stop a sentence, or they might repeat something a couple times before they get their sentence all together. As long as it's not happening too frequently, or as long as you don't feel like children are pushing the words out, or maybe prolonging the words, such as the sun is out. I did a couple of things there. I prolonged and I also looked away. That's a bit of a behavior there. So long as you're not seeing some behaviors such as that, it can be a normal part of language development.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the title that you chose for today.
I was very excited about it.
Of the Gab.
Yes.
Why did you choose that title?
Well, most of the parents that I meet are very interested in helping their children learn the gift of the Gab, helping them learn how to speak well and speak lots. But it's not just about helping our children develop the gift of the Gab. The way that we speak to our children and the way that we interact with them, the way that we gab with them, can also be a very big gift that we, as the parents and caregivers, that we can give to our children. Because if we can create these language-rich environments and back and forth interactions, true conversations, we can set our children up for success in all areas of life.
It really does expand to all areas.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So if a child has parents who perhaps they themselves did not have that opportunity to have someone who is helping them learn how to do that back and forth, can they learn how to do that?
Absolutely, yes. It's never too late to start. One of the things I like to recommend to parents, first off, if you're going to engage in these nice back and forth interactions with your child, step one, put down the phone. Put down the phone, turn off the TV, and get rid of tablets. It's impossible to have a truly interactive interaction, pardon me, if you are distracted by something. And that's a reality of nowadays, with technology being relied on more heavily for entertainment, for education, and it's so portable. We have it with us all the time. It's very, very easy to get distracted by our phones and tablets, but if you can put it away, that's the first step in being able to have a truly engaging back and forth with your child to help them learn.
Can you have a truly engaging back and forth with a baby?
Absolutely. Children, from the moment they're born, they are seeking out that interaction. And it starts from the first moment that you hold your baby and you are looking back and forth with them in your arms and engaging in those back and forth. I call them turns. Your baby makes a sound and then you coo right back at them. And or maybe they spit up and you label exactly it is what they did. Oh, little spittle, let's wipe it away. Pardon me.
Yeah.
And those interactions, they start right from the start. And
so it's talking to a baby
yes.
right from the beginning of life,
absolutely.
possibly even before.
Even before, yes. Children start to, they're learning about language even as they're in utero. They're learning about intonation. They can hear, and they might not hear the exact words that you're saying, but they're starting to pick up on the sounds in communication.
So one of the things that you talk about, and we're going to watch a video that actually explains this, and then you can tell us a little bit more, but I know that you really like it when people name things. We'll be right back.
What's really interesting is that although Ethan isn't speaking at all yet, and he's not likely to produce his first word for many months, he does listen to your voice. And in listening to your voices and the speech around him, he's actually learning a lot about language. So every time you talk to him, he's listening. He learns about the rhythm of Cantonese and English. He learns about the sounds in each, and we document that in some of our studies. He learns about your voice, that's my dad, that's my mom, as opposed to other people in the world and who he can trust. And then gradually he starts pulling out words. And what's really interesting is in the presence of a word, he'll explore other things in the world more. So when he looks at a tree, he'll see it and it's beautiful. But when you say tree, there's a lot of research that shows that he'll look at that tree differently. He'll pull out the features, and that's what will allow him to later learn that trees are made up of trunks and bark and leaves, and that there's a color green and a color brown. So in the presence of language, babies actually explore more.
Parents can laugh with their babies. They can mimic their baby's vocalizations. So if the baby is going ba, 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 the mom or the dad can say ba, ba, ba back and begin to develop these kind of back and forth contingent responses that are a part of how the baby learns to use language and how the brain begins to develop in the areas that subserve language.
So what stood out for you from that video?
I just loved the phrasing of, in the presence of language, children actually explore more. And I love that she brought up some of the research that supports that. It's true. If we can provide children with a nice language-rich environment, we can teach them more about their surroundings. And this doesn't just mean talking lots and lots and lots, talking at them. I assume this to mean talking to them, talking with them. So what to me that means is paying attention to your child's cues that let you know what they're interested in.
Yes.
So for example, for an infant, they might look out the window if you're sitting nearby one. You can follow your baby's gaze and see what they're looking at and point it out, talk about it. Oh, there's a bird. The bird is flying. They don't need to be using words to communicate with you. So being in tune and picking up on your baby's cues, their eye gaze, their gestures, their sounds even. It can be a nice opportunity to provide them language that matches their interests. And we can do this with toddlers as well. As baby's age or as children are starting to use more variable ways to communicate. So gestures, for example, we can do the exact same thing. We can match what our children are saying, and then we can add something. Match +1. So be wonderful strategy to help support your child's language development. So a toddler who runs over to the window and says, car, you can say, yes, it's a car, a red car. That car is going fast. Where is the car going? I play a game with myself where I like to match what the child has, and then +1 several times. That repetition is key to helping your children pick up on those very important words.
This is so helpful because
Yes.
it is something that parents can do. And so coming back to what you were just saying about match +1, could you maybe give an example of how you would do that with a very young baby?
The very young baby. I would pay attention to, well, the match +1 relates back to following what you think they might be interested in and giving them the language for that. So that's the match part. And then, so for example, if an infant is crying, you might tell them, oh, you're crying. +1, we can add a concept as well. You're sad. You're sad because you're hungry. We can speak to our infants this way, and it is a nice back and forth exchange with them. We're teaching them how to engage. This will turn into conversational turns, how they can communicate with everybody around them.
And then I noticed that when you were giving
Yes.
the example of the toddler,
Yes.
it was a little bit longer, or like few more
Yes.
words in the sentence. So it's as if we have to adjust to the child.
Absolutely. We are constantly adjusting the way that we speak to our children. And for many, we do this naturally. For babies, we speak to them with more of a sing-song voice, a little bit higher pitch. For toddlers, we need to make sure that we're speaking at a level that they can understand. For a child who is speaking in 1- and 2-word phrases, it's probably not very helpful for me to speak to them in 7 or 8 sentences.
Caitlin, I've heard you say not all communication is equal. What do you mean by that?
I believe I was referring to the way that we interact with our children and how important it is to focus on quality over quantity. So it's not enough to expose our children to a lot of language, such as what happens perhaps if you sit your child in front of the TV. They're being spoken at. They're not having an opportunity, though, to engage in the back and forth conversations, and there's a lot that they are not learning how to do, such as how to ask questions, how to repair a conversational breakdown if they don't understand something. They're not learning how to use words that they're hearing. So it's very important to have this quality interaction, but also quality in terms of the variety of different types of words that we're teaching our children. We don't just need to talk to our children about object names and colors. That happens a lot. There's so many other types of words. We have other describing words: fast, slow, soft, rough, question words, who, what, where. We have location words. We have, the list goes on and on. So we can remember to use all sorts of different kinds of words with our children. And also, when we have these interactions, these back and forth conversations with them, it gives them an opportunity to practice using those words and to get natural feedback on whether or not they've used it correctly or incorrectly, and it just needs a little bit of tweaking.
We're going to take a little break where you can learn a little bit more about KidCare Canada Society and the resources that are freely available to all of you, and we'll be right back.
A child's early years are foundational for lifelong mental and physical health. KidCare Canada Society is a charitable organization incorporated in the province of British Columbia. We seek to empower families to raise their children to be socially and emotionally healthy, and ensure families and those who support them have easy access to relevant, current research at no cost to the end user. Our appealing videos, now being captioned in various languages, feature world-renowned experts and real families. To access these videos and other free resources, log on to KidCareCanada.org.
Caitlin, one of the things that many parents worry about is language delays. Could you talk to us a bit about that?
Yes, there can be many signs of a language delay for children who are around 20 months old. One of the things you can look out for is how many words is your child using at around 18 to 20 months. A good rule of thumb is 18 at 18. I would love to hear that your child is using at least 18 words around that time.
Okay, so what is a word for a toddler? We promised people that we would say what it is.
Yes, so a word is anything that a child is using consistently to refer to the same thing. And things that count are names, animal sounds, boo, moo, ba, etc. But also some things that count as words we might not think of are sounds that your child is using to refer to something that sounds nothing like the word. So, for example, I had a child I worked with who said ooey for milk. But this child used that word ooey every single time to ask for milk. And so we would count that as a word. Other things that count include if a child uses a word to refer to many different things, I would count that as separate words. So for example, the child who says da for that, or dad, or dog, I would count that 3 times as a word.
How do parents keep track of this?
I always ask parents to keep a running refrigerator list. It can be very difficult to list off all of the words that your child is saying off the top of your head. So generally it's nice to keep a piece of paper on the fridge, and every time you hear your child say a word, write it down. It's a very good way to keep track, and more often than not, whenever I ask parents to do this, they're always surprised at how many words their child is actually saying.
And so things like mama and dada, they really count as a word.
Absolutely, yes.
So what doesn't count?
If your child has said a word, or what you think was a word, but you've only heard it one time. Unless you hear it multiple times, we can't be sure that that's what they're using to refer to that object or person or place or thing. So that wouldn't count for me.
You talk about jargon, and you use it differently from the way we tend to use it.
Yes.
So what do you mean by jargon?
Well, jargon is that kind of vocalizations that children are using that kind of sounds like an alien language. It's children speaking in conversational intonations, but not using real words yet. So what that means is that children they're using that jargon. Well, first they start with babbling, the ba, 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 da, ba, da, and playing around with their sounds, and that that babbling turns into the jargon, where they take on conversational intonations. And what that means, it's a lot more varied, the sounds that they're using, and what that means is they're getting closer to their words. It's their way of learning how to coordinate all of the muscles, and there's a lot of muscles involved in speech, and they're learning how to coordinate that so that they can use words.
So that is very exciting and very helpful. We're going to go to another video soon, and so this one is going to be talking about something that's dear to your heart, which is how much time we spend with our children. It's called quality time.
I think we've somehow along the way established this cultural myth of what we tend to call quality time. And what we mean by this is that we can create with our children these kind of intimate moments of dense, effective interaction. We tend to think that even though we can't spend much time with our children, that we can spend quality time with them. And I think that is a concept that to some degree needs to be debunked. The quality, special moments with children come not when we're planning them, but when we least expect them. They come when we're driving a child to a soccer practice, or when we're giving a child a bath, or it's when we least expect it, and those times only come if there's enough time invested in that child over the expanse of weeks and months for those quality moments to happen. So one message would be that we need to spend time with our children. I remember seeing a bumper sticker once that said, the best thing to spend on your child is time. And I think that's an important message for all of us who are parents.
The ideal is to have all that quality time with your child. It's not always possible for all parents, but often there are other good caregivers who can spend time with the child. And what are some of the things that we want caregivers to be looking out for with a child to see if there are perhaps any language delays?
They can pay attention to how a child is using their words, how many words they're putting together, if any, yet. They can also pay attention to how is the child responding to different commands, and how are they responding to commands when no gestures are used. So for example, if I tell you, okay, hand me the book, this is giving you an extra hint. And so I don't know if you're responding to my gesture, give me the book, or if you're responding to my words. It's probably a combination of the two, but to be sure, if our children are able to follow those simple commands, best to try it without gestures, just to see where they're at. Are they able to follow one step, two step? Sometimes we can get into three, but it's much easier to listen to go to the door and put on your shoes. That's a two-step. They're related as well. And I'm pointing, go to the door, put on your shoes, versus touch your toes and spin around.
Oh, okay.
Very different, yeah.
One of the things is some of us fall into that mode of always giving commands, and I know that's not the kind of conversation that you want to promote.
No, I would love to see less directive play. Let your child take the lead, and they will show you what they're interested in, and I can guarantee you that if you follow their lead and talk about what they're interested in and what they're showing you, instead of directing them and telling them what to do, or even pestering them with so many questions, if you're able to let them take the lead, you're going to have longer and more engaging interactions. We do that as adults as well. We engage more in conversations and topics that we're interested in.
That's true.
Yes.
And I know that you're very interested in play, and you want parents to play with their children from all ages.
Yes, I would love for parents to get down and play like a child, get face to face, be on your tummy, and I love it. In your ABCs for New Parents book, you speak to that in here as well. There's lots of wonderful tips, but in here there's some wonderful ideas on how to play with an infant and what that play looks like. Really, it's embracing your inner child.
I know, that's the fun of having children, is we get to be children again too.
Yes.
So we have talked about the importance of being in tune with a child, and you have mentioned the importance of putting down a phone.
Yes, yes.
What are some of the dangers, in your view, of parents looking at their phone instead of into their child's eyes, especially with an infant or a young child learning to talk?
Well, for an infant, if we are on our phones instead of engaging in those nice back and forth interactions, we're missing out on our child's cues and their communication, because of course an infant, they're not speaking with words yet, and they're not always using their sounds either to direct your attention. Sometimes they're just using their eyes, and sometimes they are using a face. And you're going to miss that if you are on your phone. It's very, very similar if you are interacting with a toddler. There's a lot of missed opportunities. I see a lot of missed opportunities when we're distracted by technology.
So language really helps build relationships, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes. We need language in order to interact with one another, but there's also an area of communication, we call it pragmatics or social communication. And those are all of the ways that we interact with other people. As an infant, it might mean how we look at and smile and share joy with our parents. And as we get older, there's a lot of different social rules that we need to follow in order to sort of fit in.
So we don't have much time left, but one of the things that you told me about was that there's a fairly simple way for parents to be able to judge whether or not they should be asking for a referral for their child. Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yes, if your child is around 18 months, I don't know, if their child's around 18 months and they're not yet using 18 words, that 18 at 18 rule, I would maybe consider putting in a referral to your speech language pathologist, as well as if your child's not following simple commands at around that same age.
And what would be your very final message for parents?
Oh, put down the phone, pay attention to your child's interests.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Thank you very much for joining us. You can visit our website to find more KidCare Canada resources. You can follow us on social media. And please remember that we're here to support you on your journey as a parent.